again, but it won't even let me do that.
Howard, I think we've only got Nicola till 6:30, so
Yes.
we might have to.
Yes. Is Nicola with us?
Yes, she is. Yeah.
All right. Okay. I can't see her actually, but if she's there, welcome.
Hello. Thank you very much.
Indeed. Oh, hello. Hello, Nicola. I'm Roger Hargreaves. I'm chairman for today. And we will be taking, I just need to do a couple of things at the beginning, but after about 2 minutes, we'll come to you. Probably via Andy, who better say a word to everybody else about who you, what this is all about. But then basically the stage is yours until 6:30.
Wow, thank you.
You're not obliged to use all that time.
I really probably won't.
Yes. Okay. Let's declare this meeting of the project review group open. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Can I just say I'm still not working here properly and I can't log off. It won't let me out. So other than switch it off and start again, I'll go with what I've got.
Right, fine. Thank you very much indeed. I better take declarations of interest because we're obliged to do that in a format that I, Roger Hargreaves, a councillor of List Parish Council, declared that I have no pecuniary interest in any of the items on this agenda. Oh, okay, who's next? That's Keith.
I'm Councillor Keith Budden, a councillor of List Parish Council, a member of Project Review Group. I have no interest to declare in any of the items on the agenda this evening.
Right, okay. Sheila. Oh, hello.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Right. I'm Sheila Baldwin, a member of List Parish Council. I confirm that I have read the agenda for this meeting and have no interest to declare.
Right, thank you. Who have I got, else I've got? Is Jeanette there?
Yes.
Jeanette?
I'm Jeanette Lowe. I'm a parish councillor of List Parish Council. I confirm I have read the agenda and have no interest to declare in any of the items being considered this evening.
Thank you very much indeed. Andy, are you there?
I am here. Hello,
Yeah.
Nicola, as well. I, Andy Smith, am a parish councillor on List Parish Council. I've read the agenda and I confirm I've got no pecuniary interest to declare on any items this evening.
Okay, thank you. Nick, are you there?
Nick's not with us, no.
Oh, Nick
no,
is
I
not with
can't
us.
see Nick. We are expecting him, so I've just sent a message just in case he's got the time wrong. Same for Leanne.
Oh,
Okay.
Leanne's just appeared in the waiting room, actually, so I'll just let her in.
Okay, that's fine. Right, Howard, are you able to respond and give us a declaration?
Well, I'll do my best, and if nothing comes through, you'll have to let me know. I'm Howard Lindsley, a member of List Parish Council and a member of this committee. I have no pecuniary interest to declare, but in the documentation, Newman Collard playing fields are mentioned, and I am a trustee of Newman Collard playing fields.
That's fine. Thank you very much indeed. Is Leanne now back in?
Leanne is here, yeah.
Leanne, could you give a declaration?
Yes. Hi, Leanne MacDonald. I'm a councillor of List Parish Council. I've read the agenda, and whilst I have no pecuniary interest to declare, I am a trustee of the Newman Collard place.
Thank you very much. And no sign of Nick?
No.
Okay. Then in that case, I'm proposing to take item 7 on the List Village Centre redesign project now.
You need to get the declaration from Jenny, don't you, Roger?
Sorry. Oh, Jenny, I do apologise, Jenny.
And Maggie do it and Claire as well. Sorry.
Oh, and Maggie and Claire, yeah.
I can't see everybody, so I don't realise who's here. So I've missed. Is Claire here as well?
Yeah.
Good Lord, what a big meeting we've got. In this case, then, can I go Jenny, Maggie, and then Claire? Jenny.
Okay, so I've written down what you've all said. so bear with me.
Yeah.
My name is Jenny Bennett and I'm a member of Lish Parish Council. I've read the agenda and I have no pecuniary declare. This is also the moment to discover that I don't know how to say pecuniary correctly.
You join the rest of us. Yes, I'm sorry. This is a set wording which we're obliged to use.
Okay.
Maggie.
I, Margaret Nibson, a member of Lish Parish Council. I have read the agenda and I confirm I have no pecuniary interest in any of the items mentioned in the agenda tonight.
That's fine. Claire.
Hello, I'm Claire Williams. I'm a member of Lish Parish Council. I've read the agenda and I have no interest to declare on any of the items.
Right. Thank you very much indeed. Is there anybody who I've left off? No, good.
No, it's into everybody.
I hadn't expected quite so many. And we're still awaiting Nick. Right, let's go to item 7, if you don't mind, because we do have a guest here to speak to it. But Andy, could you just very briefly just lead us in and then hand over to Nicola?
My pleasure, Roger. As the committee or the group knows, we have been doing some development work on a design brief to improve the village centre, to try and outline our ambition for the place based on kind of the priority of improving it in the neighbourhood plan. We've got the detail of the design brief on the agenda for discussion later on, but one of the things that I think we all need to start thinking about is how we turn that brief into a reality of something that can actually be delivered. Nicola is here as a principal transport planner from Hampshire County Council to just talk about some of the services that the County Council can offer and some of the examples of their work where they've worked with parishes and town councils on similar schemes. I think it's worth hearing from the County Council in this regard, because one of the key things for deliverability will be that the Highways Authority agree and support the propositions that we put forward. And quite clearly, Hampshire's support is vital, and that will be one of the key things that Nicola's team and Nicola's work can offer. So on that basis, unless anyone's got any questions, I'll hand over to Nicola to just talk a bit about the history, background and services that are available.
Thank you very much, Andy. Nicola, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Very nice to meet you all. We're all getting used to these meetings now, aren't we? Are you streaming this on YouTube as well? I think that's a new one for me.
Yes, we are. All our meetings are streamed on YouTube for that packed audience out there that's hanging on to our every word.
I'm sure it's a huge audience. So I haven't prepared any slides or a presentation or anything, so it's just coming along for, I think, an initial chat.
Simple talk will be fine.
Lovely. So yes, my name is Nicola Waits. I lead our transport planning services team at Hampshire County Council. I don't represent Hampshire County Council as the statutory highway authority, though. My team is an in-house consultancy where we are all Hampshire staff through and through, but we do project work for internal teams where they've got an identified project, but also for external customers. So that includes parish councils, town councils, boroughs and districts, developers in some circumstances as well. And the reason that we set up this body, it's called Hampshire Services. Lots of our departments have a trading team like ours. Was twofold, really, to generate income for local authorities, because I think we all know the constraints that we've been under for quite a while now, but also to keep skills in-house and make sure that Hampshire doesn't become an authority that just commissions other bodies to come up with things. We keep those skills, we keep that knowledge of transport planning in-house. We take on commissions, as I say, for others, and we can help you to develop schemes. And I know that you've been looking at some placemaking work for Lish and Lish Forest, and there's a few projects that you're interested in. So just wanted to set out what we are able to offer, where you can look for information on what we've done before, and just make that contact, really, so you can come back to us if you're interested. But I suppose over the last few years, we've been working with Petersfield Town Council, who are just down the road, I think. So they were in probably quite a similar position where they'd developed their neighbourhood plan, and they had this ambition to make the centre of Petersfield nicer for walking and cycling and reduce through traffic through the town centre. But they were lacking an evidence base to take that work further forward. And so we were commissioned to undertake that study basis for them, and delivered a study. I think it was £25,000 for a comprehensive evidence review for their next steps, so that they had traffic surveys, asked people what they felt needed to be improved, drawing in everything that was in the neighbourhood plan already. But it gave them that good chance for future funding because they had a stronger basis there. That's actually on their website, so I could put a link in the chat if you wanted to go and have a look at an example of previous work we've done like that.
That would be very nice.
It's not design work. It's it's an earlier stage than that. We are now at the stage where we're on the cusp of being commissioned, hopefully for design work in that area, and we're looking to work with them over coming years on that. Obviously, there's been the emergency active travel fund schemes in the meantime as well, so we've got to see what the impact is of taking those further forward as well. But we've got a really good relationship with the town council and the other stakeholders, and it's developed into a Petersfield placemaking group, which involves East Hampshire, the South Downs National Park, making sure it's got all of that right structure behind it to take the schemes forward. So that's proving to be successful. Another example that we've done in recent years is to work with Lymington and Pennington Parish Council. So over in the New Forest, and they wanted to take on design work for improving the pedestrian and public realm in their village. And we brought in, we set up a mini team basically of the experts that we've got in various teams at Hampshire. So one of our engineers, one of our landscape designers, and a team, project lead within my team as well, to take that forward, make sure that we've done all of the necessary study work. So it was feasibility study there, having a workshop with them, understanding what the background was, looking at what they're hoping to achieve, and then taking that away and working up some options for them that could be delivered, and that would be delivered in line with Hampshire's rules around materials, around building to certain designs, but also bringing in our colleagues from landscape design, so that it wasn't just a standard engineering scheme. It looked nice as well, and it had that local flavour from I think they were thinking about having a lovely donkey statue or something as part of the centre of the village, because traditionally Lymington and Pennington had a donkey racing history. So they wanted to bring in that local character within the scheme as well. So we worked with them on that. And I mean, those are just two examples that the team has been involved in recently. But a few years back now, we worked with Bramley Parish Council in Basingstoke and Dean area as well, to do some early feasibility study work for them. They had about 6 or 7 things that they were looking at, and we helped sift those projects down to what could be deliverable. And they had grant funding actually from Basingstoke and Dean as well. So one of the top projects is now being delivered on the ground. So I think that I know, obviously there are other consultants that can do this type of work as well, and we're not saying you have to come to Hampshire County Council. Of course, you can go to whoever you like, but I suppose the main selling point of coming with Hampshire Services and with my team is that it brings all of those Hampshire specialists into the project, and it means that whatever you end up with is much more likely to be deliverable. We have seen other parishes hire other consultants in the past, and sometimes that works fine, but sometimes you end up with something that it doesn't meet Hampshire's palette of materials, or it falls outside of our asset management or traffic management policies, and it becomes very difficult because you've spent a lot of money on something which unfortunately isn't deliverable. It doesn't guarantee that you will end up with a deliverable scheme if you come with us, because of course if we find statutory works underneath the carriageway that would cost £400,000 to build to move, and you're never going to be able to have that money to do that, then the project might stop at that point. But it makes it much more likely that you'll end up with something which would be acceptable to the Highway Authority, and also would reduce any maintenance ongoing costs to either yourselves or to the County Council, which which I'm sorry is something you probably look to avoid if you could help it. So if I've set out to Andy already that we don't tender for these kinds of projects. So if you are looking to put something out to commission and look for bids, then it's not something that we do, because as a local authority we don't want to chase after things that we're not got a high degree of chance of getting the work, because we don't have that level of resource. But we do have a couple of routes to go through for commissioning if you are interested. One of them is the community funded highway infrastructure route, which is on our website, and that's where you've got an individual area, maybe like a particular junction that you want to look at improving, and the fee relates to a percentage of what the scheme is likely to cost to deliver. So you pay an upfront fixed cost, but then you get the study work, and at the end of it, hopefully you've got something that might be deliverable. And Otterbourne recently did this to look at putting in a toucan crossing on one of their main routes. And because the scheme, was doable, and there was Section 106 funding locally available as well, Hampshire was able to commit that Section 106 funding to that scheme, which was a really positive outcome for them. It's not something we can guarantee on every scheme, of course, but if there is a good scheme, it does meet all of the objectives, then it is a potential. And the other route would just be a direct contract if you are looking to do something bigger, like a master plan, where you might have costed up options that you could deliver at various stages. Then that's what we did for Lymington and Pennington. It wasn't last summer now, last year, it was just a blur, the year before, and we did a master plan for them as a standalone commission. So hopefully that gives just a bit of a flavour of what we can do. If you want to see anything on the ground that's been delivered by our teams, then I'd probably give Romsey as the best recent example, because that's our newest placemaking type scheme that's on the ground. It's not on Google Maps yet, so if you want to have any pictures, if you haven't been to see it in the last couple of years, then do let me know and I can send a couple of photos across for you to have a look at. But that's probably enough talking. Is there anything anything you'd like to ask?
Well, thank you very much indeed for that, Nicola. I'll start off with one question. I don't know whether you've seen the Village Centre redesign project brief that Andy and people have been working on.
Yes, I have, yeah.
I just wondered, without wishing to pin you down to anything, are there things in there which you think you might be able to contribute to?
Yes, yeah, I think so for sure. It would be really good. I think the approach that we would probably take if we were commissioned would be to have a workshop at the very start of the project where we go through the detail of that with yourselves and understand the thought behind some of those elements and what you'd like to achieve. But yes, certainly it looked really like a good start.
Thank you. I turn to others. Who else would like to come in? Anyone?
I've just got one question.
Thank you, Lynn. Leanne?
I mean, how you say that you don't tender, you don't go for tenders. So it's about how we would know whether we were getting value for money.
Yes, of course. I mean, I think if you were to set out a brief and say that you were coming with Hampshire, then we would do a costed proposal for you, so you could have a look at that. And you don't have to take it, but if we knew that you were going to tender it competitively, then we probably wouldn't look to go with it. But I would suppose that the best way of describing the value for money would be that you're going to have something that's deliverable at the end of it, and that's guaranteed that it's something that Hampshire would accept. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case with going with a different consultant, and it's fine. They may be able to get in touch with us as part of your project brief, and that's fine. But they will end up having to have design checks undertaken by Hampshire County Council, which would be at cost to yourselves, to make sure that it is deliverable. And there's a lot of toing and froing in that case. And but yes, of course, you could have a chat with other parish or town councils perhaps that have gone down that route before. But I think the work we did for Lymington and Pennington as a master plan came in at about £25,000 or £30,000. So for the outcomes from that, I think it probably is quite competitive with what else is out there. And we do only charge our actual costs. We're not allowed to make a profit.
Thank you very much. Anybody else
May I
like
ask
to
a
come in?
question, Roger?
Yes, Andy.
Thanks for that, Nicola. That was really helpful in terms of saying that you're not making a profit out of it, because that's actually really interesting to hear, and I hadn't picked up on that, and that's useful to know, because actually there will be a profit margin built in for other people should we seek to commission them. I'd be interested if you have an idea about the ballpark figure of Hampshire's costs for approving other people's designs and checking them to make sure they're compliant, because that's something we would need to build on in beyond our own cost of commissioning someone. So if you don't have that now, that's great, but it would be useful to know going forward, so we can get the total cost of commissioning rather than just the cost of employing a third-party consultant.
Okay, I don't have that to hand, but yes, I can go away and give you a figure for that.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come in? Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much, Nicola. I mean, this was only intended to give everybody a flavour of what
Sorry, Roger.
Oh, Lizzie, are you there? Sorry.
Yeah, hi. Sorry. I was wondering, would you, does Hampshire County Council do a cost of plans along with the plans for a scheme?
Give you an idea of how much it would cost to deliver?
Yeah, like a cost analysis.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we would include quantity surveying work as part of the study.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Sorry, I can see some people, but not everybody on my screen. So apologies.
I'm not sure Sheila wants to ask something. Roger.
Sheila, were you wanting to come in?
No, I was just listening.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Okay.
Oh, well, Howard wants to ask a question.
Oh, and Howard?
Yes, I'm a bit at a disadvantage because the copy I have of this, some of it is so faint it's unreadable. In particular, page 14, apart from the fact that there's one bit that's yellow on it, but I don't know the significance, the keys I can't read either in the two places they are to match up.
So may I come in? Just to clarify, we're not talking about the detail of the report at the moment. This was just, I think, just an earlier bit of the conversation about Hampshire coming to talk about the option of potentially talking to them about implementation when it's agreed. I think that's where we are, isn't
yes,
it?
Yes, can I just say, Howard, we will come to the report itself in a moment, but at the moment we're just needing to get some understanding of the sort of services that Nicola and her group could offer us were we to choose to go down that route.
Okay, sorry, I was looking at the agenda and I thought we were about to approve something that...
No. Good Lord, we wouldn't approve anything, Howard. Right, anybody got anything else to say to Nicola? In that case, thank you very much, Nicola, for coming along and giving your time to us. I think that gives us an initial flavour. Andy and others who are involved with the project itself and taking it forward, I'm sure we'll come back to you with any number of further questions. But this enables the overall group to see you. And just so you understand, the purpose of this group is to look at all the projects we have and not so much as the detailed understanding and management of them, but to understand the relative prioritization and costs, and are they something we ought to undertake, and what sort of approach might we do to undertaking them, but not to actually do the day-to-day management ourselves in this group. So it's been very useful, I think, to understand the sort of service that we could go to if we wished. Is that okay, Nicola? Anything further, or just a very pleasant goodbye?
No, thank you very much. It's very nice to meet you all and hope to hear from you, but I'm going to go and have my tea now.
That's very sensible of you. Thank you very much for coming, Nicola.
Bye.
Thank you, Nicola.
Bye.
Bye.
Right, thank you very much. Has Nicola left the meeting now?
She has, yeah.
Okay.
Roger, if you can't see everyone on your screen, there is, on my iPad anyway, there is, if you press it, there is a kind of icon you can press on.
Yes, I know that's the theory, and the theory is the same here, but it's not displaying everybody for some reason. I don't know why. I'll investigate later.
Okay.
Just to say that Nick joined the meeting during that, or just so Nick is now here.
Nick, just to do the formalities, I don't know whether you're able to give a declaration of interests, Nick.
Firstly, to apologise. And secondly, I, Nick Wilson, Parish Councillor, member of this committee, have read the agenda and have no interest to declare.
Right, thank you very much. Now I will continue with the item we've been looking at, which is the Village Centre Redesign project, which is item 7. This one project is slightly different from some others. Others are very clearly managed by, say, facilities or highways, and we're looking at them from a sort of prioritisation and financial point of view. This one, though, which is a very substantial size, I think there are issues here about how they're going to be managed in the future that we may need to consider. But this is really just asking us to approve a brief to take forward. We're not committing ourselves beyond that. But can I leave it to Andy to take it further forward? Andy?
Thank you, Chair. So really, I'll just go do a brief recap over how we got to where we are and what I'm asking of the review group today. So in the summer, having gone through the neighbourhood plan and other priority documents, it was agreed that we should work up a village centre redesign brief to try and verbalise how we might, as a parish council, deliver our ambition for village centre improvement, which is in the neighbourhood plan, amongst other and in our village priority document. This brief has been basically a labour of love for Lizzie and I over the last few months. It reflects the document that went to Highways, went to Full Council, and then was then referred to Highways and Planning Committee. The document reflects the comments received from Highways and Planning Committees. It also reflects the input from Margaret Effenberg, who Planning Committee were keen that we shared it with, given her history in the Village Design Group. And also it was circulated again prior to this meeting for any final further comments. So where I would like the the group to endorse is that this document is now our collective view of what the Village Centre Commission should read like, and to have the authority to explore with the chair of the group and also the chair of finance options for procuring, testing the market and making a recommendation to full council for how we take this work forward with a supplier in a way that is consistent with our standing orders and financial regulations. So ideally, I'm looking for two things: one, sign off for the document, and two, agreement to do the market testing work to establish if we want to take this forward, if it's financially viable for us to take this forward, and if we do, who we would recommend to full council or this group to commission.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So it really is a two-part proposal here. One is the brief itself, which has been circulated a lot by now, and everybody's had a chance to comment. And it would be very helpful just to sign off the document as a project brief. And then secondly, what should be done with it in terms of taking it forward and testing the market and so on, for which the cost element is clearly a big issue here. Can I deal with the first point on the actual brief? Do people have comments, any further comments on the actual content of the brief?
Leanne's got a hand up, Roger.
If this is a formal document, I would suggest it needs ownership in the form of who wrote it, whether it's the Highways Committee, and it needs to have a date.
I'm very happy.
Andy, I have some sympathy with that view. I think there is a need now, if it starts on a journey, to start formalising it, and I'm sure it'll get amended over time. So it needs a clear a date and number on it, and so on, so we know exactly where we are.
Yeah, but is it coming from the Highways Committee? Is it coming from the project review group? I'm not really sure.
One could put a little bit on it which shows which group has considered it at which stage, so it's absolutely clear what it's been through.
Okay.
Would that help?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is that all right, Andy?
More than happy with that, and actually I think it'll be important for version control going forwards.
Very fine.
Well, what I would say is it has been reviewed by both the Highways and Project Review Group members.
Yes.
So,
yeah, quite. Okay. Nick, I saw you with a hand up.
Yes, I've had lots of chance to input to it, so apologies for adding a couple of points. But having now seen this version, in 2.4 subsection D, it refers to them looking at visual improvements to the Lower Mead shopping area with the potential for a new piazza-style area. And later on, it includes the designs, the detailed designs suggested by the Village Design Group. And I just thought, for the sake of clarity, we might need to just make clear whether the Village Design Group designs are ones that we are expecting whoever gets the contract to adopt, or whether they're just there for illustrative purposes, inviting whoever gets the contract to come up with their own proposals. So that was a question. On the next page, 2.5, there is something, I think it's probably from something I drafted, but there are some words missing in the third line of 2.5, may result in what? And I think it's increased traffic on other routes, some words to that effect. But there's something missing there.
Okay, thank you. Andy, can you respond to the 2 points?
Yeah, on the first one, my view is that it's an idea of what it could look like. So I would prefer to suggest that rather than what it should look like, because we want it in the round work. On 2.5, I think we will just add in increased traffic flow or something.
I agree with you that they're illustrative. So could they be clearly marked as illustrative only?
Yes.
At this stage? I mean, I think that it is helpful to have them, but what we end up may well be different.
Absolutely, and I really don't think now is the time to bind anyone with anything. This is our initial thoughts and feeding into the scoping work.
Okay. Any further comment on the content of the brief?
Howard's got his hand up, Roger.
Howard?
Yeah, 1 or 2 comments. 1.3 on page 1, it includes the crossover centre, which is nowhere near the village centre. So I think that should come out. And 1.6, at the end of that, it says parking for the centre is increasingly difficult with car parks close to capacity. I don't think that's accurate. I've never tried to park in the centre of Liss and not being able to do so in one or other of the car parks. So I think that should come out.
In which case, Howard, I think you're very, very lucky.
Well,
I offer 2 observations on that. On the first one, we will need, if it's not the crossover, we will need to define where the village centre ends on Station Road as an exit route from it. And the crossover seemed like as logical a place as any other exit. On the car parking issue, that is a direct quote from the neighbourhood development plan. So I guess if we don't think that's true, we have a bit of an issue with what's in the neighbourhood plan as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's just that the village centre is defined elsewhere in the document as finishing at the railway crossing.
I would agree.
That is not necessarily where we say the village centre ends. It is the scope of where this plan is for. It's the scope of where this brief is. It's not defining where the village centre is.
Well, it says Liz has a distinct centre.
I can see, I take both points, but I can see room for confusion here. Andy, can we leave it with you that you introduce a bit of greater clarity?
Yes, absolutely.
Between the overall extent and the extent of which the actual project is looking at.
Absolutely. I'll make sure there's consistency in the document as Lizzie and I go through the comment one final time.
That's fine, thank you.
Right, could I make also a comment on page 14? There are two diagrams. One is existing and one is suggested. The suggested one, it's so faint, I can't read any of what the keys are for, and I can't read the numbers against whatever they are, even with a magnifying glass. So I don't know what's happening there.
I think maybe yours is just a printing issue, Howard. These are from, these were sent to me by Margaret Ethenberg from, what was their group called, Andy? The
Village Design Group.
Yeah, from the Village Design Group. So this is from quite a few years ago. We just scanned in their plans and stuck them in there. And on the version I've got in front of me, it's they're quite clear. So I can resend it to you if you need.
Well, Lizzie, I think it's a wider problem than that because I can't read the key on my copy either.
I can't. We've all got the same.
So I think one just needs to look at clarifying that. And it also needs to be clear that when it's a suggested plan, that was what was done at the time when they did the work here. But
yeah, I'll put that in.
Illustrative.
Well, that's why the youth group were in, because at the time they were next to the station where Puddle Ducks is now.
Yes, that's very true.
The other thing on page 16 and 17, the photograph's good. The diagram above that, it's got the red post boxes, which I can see. I can see there's a proposal to make the lamps higher up, but I haven't a clue what the rest of it is. And similarly for page 17, the only thing I can make out is a couple of people standing there and the telephone box. So I think we need to find a way of getting that clearer.
Right, I won't spend time on that now, but can you take the general point away, Andy? I do rather agree, particularly on 17, it's very unclear. If you could just make sure if this document is going to travel round, it's got to have things which are absolutely clear.
So I will absolutely take the point on clarifying that all of the things at the back of the document are illustrative purposes only. Also, I do think it's the way this is printing out, because if you look at the electronic version of this document, it's all very clear. So I'm unclear about just how much influence I can have in the way this prints out, but I will definitely look into it.
Can I just leave it for you and Lizzie to look at the issue, and we won't discuss it any further? Just take it away.
Quick question, Roger.
Yeah.
The Village Design Group sort of predates me. I know they did a lot of work, which obviously part of it are here. I just wondered what the status of their report was. Was it adopted by the parish council?
I think it was, but actually I don't know for certain.
Right.
Yeah, I believe it was. I wouldn't stake my life on it, but I'm sort of 90% certain it was.
I think it was adopted, but half adopted, shall we say. I'm not sure there was any real firm adoption, but I might be wrong on that. Can I say as well, I hope that Margaret Ethenberg is going to be continuing to be associated with the project, because it was her who kicked off these ideas in the first place.
I'm just wondering whether we're supposed to carry out the Village Design Group's report.
No, I don't think we're under any obligation to do that. I mean, time has moved on, and I think we're entitled to relook. But I don't want to lose the work that they did. It's there to spur us on and also to provide some illustrations of what may be done. So it exists, but it's not the be all and end all.
Okay.
Now, yes, that wasn't what I was trying to say. I think Margaret Effenberg is a good egg who it might be to our advantage of the parish council to keep her involved with the detail of what's proposed.
I completely agree with that. And Margaret has had this document in draft, and the annex at the back of it that reflects some of the village design work was put in at her suggestion with some of the feedback she provided. So this reflects her contribution to the process. And I would have thought that she, along with a lot of other people, will be key consultees as we go forward developing this work.
Yeah, that's good news. Thanks.
Right. Okay. Can I just clarify, Andy, has full council actually adopted this brief as a brief?
No, it hasn't. So the remit was for it to come through the project review group because of the cross-cutting nature of it.
Yes.
So we haven't formally gone back to full council with it.
So if this group is content with the content of the brief, its next stage is to go before full council. Is that correct?
It could be, yes. I mean, in some ways, it depends on how the vast majority of us feel, because we'll just be sitting with another hat on looking at it again.
Well,
so,
I don't want to slow things down, and indeed my suggestion was that if the brief is adopted, that you get on doing work. But I do think, given the significance of this piece of work, it's something that needs the approval of full council.
I'm absolutely happy with that. It was more because actually we could, if timing and whether we, yeah, absolutely. Let's get this adopted, and then you, I, and Claire can still do the work on procurement and identifying people potentially to do this for us in tandem if colleagues are happy with that. Right. Yeah.
Okay, I'd like you, Andy, therefore, just to move that the group adopts the brief as a brief. That's not what we're going to do with it, but that they adopt the brief in terms of its content. Can you do that and get somebody to second you?
I would like to move what Roger said, please.
And is there somebody to second that?
Nick or Claire, both of them are waving.
That's fine. All those in favour? Right. Anybody against?
Yeah, I can't subscribe to adopting something that the key parts I can't see well enough.
Fair enough. I take the point,
Howard.
I can see the difficulty there. But let's.
Can I just say that it is a fair point, but these papers are sent out in advance of the meetings. If anyone has a problem with any of the papers, all you need to do is say, and I'll make sure it's rectified. I don't think we should wait to the meeting because it then just holds things up. Please tell me if there's a typo, if you can't read something. All these issues should be raised before a meeting.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that. I won't spend more time on that. Right. That's the first part of our consideration. Now, I think everybody needs to understand, including me, exactly what will happen now with the brief. Part of it is just that it gets formal approval from the council, but in terms of actually taking work on the brief forward, what will be the next steps?
So I come in now, Chair?
Yes, do.
So my proposition is that we need to test the market for people that can help us with this brief. Clearly, Hampshire County Council are someone that we want to talk to, but there may be others that we want to talk to too. I would like to do this in a way that doesn't, that is in a way that we can move it forward quite quickly. So I will propose, subject to the group and full council, well, subject to this group being happy, to work with Claire as the chair of finance and therefore the kind of owner of probity and making sure we spend public money properly according to our standing orders and financial regulations, and also Roger as the chair of the committee and also the chair of council on putting a proposal either to full council or to this group to go on to full council for how we procure a company to work with us on this, including a recommendation for who it should be. And that may be that we recommend we don't take it forward because it is too expensive. That may be that we recommend going to a competitive tender because we think there are a number of people out there who we want to do, or it may be that we recommend going with a sole supplier if it's consistent with our financial regulations and our duty to get best value for money. But I would like to have a smaller group to do that work, because doing it in the committee will probably make it quite challenging to do in a way that's nimble and timely. But I think with the sense check of the chair of finance in particular, that would be quite helpful to have that with her eye on it.
Okay, Andy, I understand that, but if this eventually could get a result in going to tender, we do need to know how we're going to finance this. So is further work going to be done on that?
Oh, before we knew how we've got £10,000 ring fenced in the budget already.
Yes.
That may or may not be enough for it. I think we need to have the conversation with potential suppliers and work out what our route is first, and then work out what the costs look like. So we can't work out costs without talking to people is where I'm at, and actually engaging with people to say, this is what it looks like. So I need to be able to do that with some companies, otherwise it's going to be very difficult for me to get a kind of cost.
My reaction to that is it's obviously reasonable to talk to people, but at some point one's going to have to say you can't go any further without having some clarity as to whether we might be able to finance it or not. So at some point you'll need to bring it back so we can look specifically at what it's likely to be costing us.
So that's absolutely fine. We have 10,000 in the budget. We've heard from Hampshire that indicatively it might cost between 25 and 30,000 pounds from them. So we could have a in principle conversation about whether or not we think that that is an amount that we could countenance for doing this work or not, to inform that conversation. I'm entirely in the hands of the group and in you, Roger, as chair, in terms of how you want to play this, to be completely honest with you.
That's, sorry to be hogging this, everybody, but I was trying to clarify how we deal with the money side alongside. Is the implication then that we actually have some informal conversations with possible providers on this to get a feel for what it may cost? We could then sit back and think, well, God, if it's going to cost that much, we can or cannot do it. And at that point, that's when we decide possibly to go for a formal tender or something of that sort.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why I wanted to do it with you and with Claire to do the exploration and then the sense check to see if we think it's sensible, and then come back. I don't think it should just be one person doing it, because I think there's a kind of a risk in that. So we need a kind of a smaller group, I think, in my view.
Nick's got his hand up.
Nick, other views, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely support the idea of some informal testing of the market. Seems to me that if we did satisfy ourselves that we should do this, and then we went out to formal tender to get a number of organisations to do all the detail they'd need to do to put in a formal tender, and then for us to pull out because we couldn't afford it, would be seen as sort of bad faith. So I'd much rather we find out how much this would cost and then decide whether we want to go forward to that stage.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, if I can come in tonight, Roger, I think it's, I quite agree with what Nick's saying. I think it's a not dissimilar situation to when we appointed architects to come up with designs for the village hall the first time, for the pavilion rather, the first time around. We very much held a very informal beauty parade in the parish office one afternoon first to get a ballpark from them of what they thought it would cost, making sure that we weren't going to, we weren't expecting them to put their ballpark in tablets of stone, but at least let us judge how much we would need to pay to get something done.
Right, okay. So anybody else comment, Howard?
Yes, just one thing. Has anybody approached the owner of the land yet?
Not this time round, but we do know it's an issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, we shouldn't waste an awful lot of time if he's going to turn it down on principle. That's just my feeling.
That's a fair point. Okay, we can take that point on board.
I mean, it's worth rechecking, but yeah, I agree. But I think in the past, it's always been made clear by him that he was certainly then quite happy for us to do whatever we wanted, as long as he didn't have to pay anything towards it.
Yeah, I think we need to make 100% sure if we can.
It's a point. It's a point. It's one of the points of investigation we need to just pick up.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, that engaging with key stakeholders is a key part of the work going forward as well. So actually, there's a bit about that in the document too. So I completely agree with Howard. It is important that we kind of understand where the landowner is, but the landowner for Tesco's is not the single determinant of our ambition for the village centre at the same time.
Okay, we take that point. Now, anybody else got a comment? Right, well, the proposition is that we form a group, which Andy at the moment is proposing should be him, me, and Claire. But I wouldn't object if there was a fourth one. I wouldn't like it to be bigger than 4. But if there's somebody else who feels they can contribute, that would be helpful. And the purpose of that group...
Nick's got his hand up, Roger.
Who?
Nick.
Nick, yes?
I'm making the offer. I'm making the offer as I've been quite involved.
I would be very comfortable if others are with taking Nick's offer and make it a group of 4. And the purpose of that group is to investigate on an informal basis possible procurement arrangements and costs. When that has been done, then to sit back and look at where we are in terms of what seems possible and how much it's going to cost. And I suspect at that time there will be a need to bring it back to the project review group for the group to make a decision whether to proceed further or in a different direction or whatever. So if you're all comfortable with that, that will be the next step in this piece of work. We will at the same time, I think, just get the actual brief signed off by the council, because I think it's, although I realise most of the council are here, I think it's just helpful to have a formal decision by council, just adopting it as a brief, as the basis on which we are proceeding at the moment. Like
Sounds good.
Thank you very much. Okay, so if you're all happy, that's what we will do.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, let's get back to the main agenda. Many of the other items will actually be very quick, so don't be too frightened by the length of the agenda.
Chair, I'm going to lead the meeting as I just dialed in for that.
Right, that's fine, Lizzie. It's been
okay. Thanks, Lizzie.
Having you here.
Thank you all.
I hope you're getting better rapidly.
Appreciate that.
You are. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks, Lizzie. Bye.
Right. Can I just let me do with the formal bit, the minutes of the previous meeting? Are you happy with them as a true and correct record? Okay. Then can I move them at the minutes? And can I have somebody to second that? Yes, Andy.
Andy's got his hand up. Yeah.
All those in favour? All those against?
It's everyone, I think. Yeah.
Right, that's fine. Okay. Right. I personally wasn't proposing to take any matters arising simply because the list of projects will come up under other items anyway. Although I'd like you to keep half an eye on some of the comments under 06/PR20, because I think when we come to the public consultation and community engagement bits, there are 1 or 2 remarks there which are just helpful to refer back to. But I wasn't going to discuss them at this point. I'm just drawing your attention to them. Is that all right? So slightly swiftly, I am intending to move on from the minutes.
Yeah.
Fine, thank you. Now, review of established and planned projects. This will be a regular item, and it doesn't mean that I expect us to spend any time on this, but it really is just to make sure that we are just ticking off where we are on various items. Sarah has very helpfully provided a list. I think we may develop this list further as we go through time, but this is a very helpful first stab at it, really. And I will just very quickly pick this up. There would the village hall toilet refurb is ticked off. We have done that. Well done. West List recreation we'll come to, and the community garden we will come to in a moment, or is this the item we'll deal with? No, yes, let's just touch upon the Mill Road community garden, which did come up at council last time in terms of the license. What I'm interested in is not so much the detail here, but again, how is this being taken forward? I just want to be clear what the arrangements are. Who is leading on this?
Shall I speak?
Yes.
As outlined to the last council meeting, I'm delighted to say that David Dodds has agreed to lead on it, working with Lizzie, but referring to both myself and Sarah in between facilities meetings. We're planning to take an implementation plan and timetable to the next meeting of facilities in March. So it will be under the oversight of facilities, but there's quite a bit of work to be done in the meantime.
Thank you very much for that. And I think given its funding position and where we've got to on this, I think there is no doubt that this remains a priority project for us.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes,
as a new councillor, is it possible to shadow David in that project?
Good Lord, I'm sure it is.
Okay.
You might give David a shock, but I think that's absolutely fine.
I'm not talking stalking, just shadowing.
No.
Jeanette,
Yes.
may we have a phone conversation in the next day or two? I'd be happy to act as your I was trying to think of a tactful way of putting it, but marriage broker.
I shan't tell my husband. Thank you.
Quite. Yes. You touch upon actually a real issue for new councillors, because we need to find ways to help you learn what's going on. And particularly if there's a project like that you're interested in, then by all means, find an opportunity to shadow what's going on. So, but I will leave it in Nick's hands to broker that. Thank you. Okay, on that. Just moving down the list, we've got courtesy crossings at West List. That project is still underway, but has started. Is that correct?
I thought it was finished.
There's a civil crossing still to go in on Station Road, but it requires a road closure. So Hampshire County Council are just working that out. So it's in the pipeline. It's partially completed.
Right. There's no need for us to do anything further with it, though. That's fine. That's all I want to know. Likewise, village gateways and the school zone improvements, which are there. You've got some funding for these, is that correct?
Based on, so the application still has to be made, but based on council's decision at the last meeting, they are both fully funded from 106 money.
Well, that's what I wanted to pick up on. I mean, I think again we're agreed on the project, although I know one or two members have reservations on the actual detail of design. And I just note that, but I'm not going to get into that at this meeting. I just want to pick up your wording, fully funded. Are you confident that it's fully funded?
I am confident that it's fully funded. We have a significant amount of highways 106 money. And even if the project as scoped increase in budget, we still have 20,000 beyond that's there for phase 2 of the school zone stuff that we could potentially dip into. So I think that these are fully funded unless there's some significant changes in costing. And I have not heard that from in my conversations with officers at Hampshire County Council in the design work that they're doing.
That's all I think we need to know for the moment. But obviously you will need to come back if there any doubts arise on that. Fine, okay. Over the page, the village centre improvements we've just talked about. The forest.
I just asked that in the future we describe the school zone and gateways as two separate projects. I know it's a minor thing, but they are.
Yes, no, I think that's right. I think they are separate items, and it's best considered that way. Over the page, village centre improvements we've talked about. Forest road improvements, that's a project still to be worked up. Is that correct?
It is, and I need to have a conversation with Nicola, who we've just been speaking to, about options around that, because the community infrastructure options that are available, so bollards and gateways, are not suitable for Forest Road, which is a bigger project. So I need to scope that and come back to the Highways Committee and then full council with a proposition around it.
That's fine. Again, that's not for this group to get into that detail, but we just need to confirm that it's still a project that is a priority. It does reflect what's in the action plan. So we leave you to get on with it, and in due course bring forward a project brief or proposal.
Well, Roger, can I just very briefly come in on something there?
Yeah.
And Howard will probably prick his ears up at this point, because I know it's something he's referred to in the past. But I was in a meeting all afternoon this afternoon with the South Downs National Park, and they were talking about ideas that they've got for a park over the next few years. And one of the experiments which they've done on part of the A272, but not this end of the A272, but between Midhurst and Petworth, is in some of the places where they wanted to slow down traffic, of totally removing all road markings altogether. And so it is just literally just tarmac. And apparently it's working. Apparently that is working to slow the traffic down, which is intriguing. I know Howard will know that years ago they did something similar in West Meon, but
yes, we tried some years ago to get the centre line in Station Road removed in order to slow down the traffic, and this advice came from the police officer who dealt with traffic and was based at Whitehill at the time. And we tried to do this, and the county council said they'd looked at it, but it turned out they'd looked at it from a desk in Winchester. Anyway, they then said you couldn't take the line away where there was a road coming in. And about the same time, they removed all the white lines, centre and coming in, on the A32, which is considerably faster road than Station Road. And that was an experiment, and that seems to have worked. And it looks from what Keith said now that Sussex have done the same on the A272. So I think if we can persuade the county council to look at it again, we might get improvement in the speeds that go up and down Station Road. When the county council did a detailed check by putting their box of tricks on a lamppost for a couple of weeks, it turned out the average speed was over 30 miles per hour. And it's not so much the 31s, but it was the 37s and the 38s, and it started getting big then.
Okay, Howard, well, thank you very much for that. Let's throw that back at those who are working on this project as one of the things to take account of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move down. Groundsman's Hut, we're close to signing the license. I'm assuming, Nick, that you and the Facilities Committee will actually manage the actual transfer and the moving in and the use of the garage and all the practical side of things. Is that so?
That's indeed so. I don't think there'll be any conflict on my part as being a trustee at Newman Collard in that process.
No, because we made the decision. And there are no cost implications?
None that I have become aware of.
Right, okay. That's all I want to be sure of. I just want to make sure that it's noted, these things. CCTV enhancement. Sarah, you said to me, although this is long-standing, its origins relate to the CCTV at Newman Collard, and you wondered whether it was actually a matter for the trust rather than ourselves. Am I right in that?
That is right. Although I'm not sure whether there have been designs on wider CCTV enhancement in the village.
Certainly it's been mentioned. This is one of those projects that sort of knocks about, but nobody actually seizes it and does any firm work on it. And leaving aside Newman Collard, do people think enhancing CCTV in the village itself, particularly the village centre, is something we need to do? Might it be something which is done actually as part of the village centre redesign work, for example?
I haven't looked at any of the videos recently, but I understand that it's a case of the quality of picture is sometimes not very good, especially at night.
That's correct. That's correct.
And we're talking here about better quality rather than more cameras, are we? Or are we talking about both?
Well, it may be both. The point is, we've not done any work on it. Is this something that we think we actually ought to do a bit of work on? Or have we got enough on our plate?
I was going to say, Roger, can I just say, from my point of view, this doesn't feel like a priority on its own. It's either village centre redesign work, but that's possibly a tangent. But I don't know. I don't see anyone taking this forward. So why would we keep it on our list if we're not going to do it? We've got quite a lot on, and yeah. So I would quite happily argue for this to either be dropped off or potentially rolled into some of the intergenerational friendship work that Nick's thinking about, potentially as a solution to that. Maybe, I don't know.
Certainly, I get the feeling it's not something we think is a high priority at the moment.
Yeah.
No, if we're paying all this money for village redesign, perhaps it's something we might want to roll into it in terms of, you know, when they're redesigning the village to get the best places for the CCTV, the best position.
Well, that may be. Nick, I can see you.
Yeah, I was going to agree with Andy, but I'm also going to agree with Leanne. I think really we ought to just sort of put it in the fridge for the moment.
Yeah,
there is too much else on to do a thorough job of work on it ourselves. I would like to feel that we have identified one or more good reasons for upgrading it before we do any work on it. So, for example, were this committee to agree that we should do a little bit of scoping work about the intergenerational issues, then that might lead to there being reasons. Equally, were we to spend a great deal of money in future years on improving the village centre, we might feel that protecting that then from vandalism and so on would be a good reason. But in the meantime, I haven't heard any particularly strong requests from anyone to upgrade it at the moment.
Okay, can I leave it like that then, that we don't delete it entirely, but we leave it as a low priority in its own right. It's something that we may reconsider in the light of other projects or a greater clarity of its purpose. I don't want it to drop off the list, but it's certainly way down that list in terms of us doing anything for the moment. Okay. Slightly moving on, the drainage, Newman Collard, that's completed. The Batang, the court is lovely, just you can't get to it. There's a question of allocating funds for this path, which I was going to consider under item 8, because the proposal was that we might use some of the, it says SIL funding, but it's actually section 106 funding, is it not?
No, it is actually SIL funding, but it's the portion of the SIL funding that's made directly to us.
Okay. Right, let me return to that under item 8 then. Community allotment, that nothing's been done on that. Is that correct?
I have, in discussion with David Dodds and with Sarah, we've agreed that we can't do anything significant to get it started until COVID restrictions have been removed. I would say that I wasn't going to ask to correct the minutes of the last meeting, which said there were no funding implications. I think once we have consulted members of the allotment community and wider stakeholders and come up with a potential plan, there might or might not be funding implications, but we certainly have no idea what they would be, and I doubt if they'd be enormous. But what we're thinking is, if we can, if the government has released us from captivity, maybe do a bit of scoping work in the autumn with a view to it being a project for 2022.
If others are content to leave it like that and therefore leave it with facilities, I'm very happy. Okay, let's do that. And finally, the village hall, which really is two things. One is just the more routine maintenance and redecoration works. We're still intending to do that, are we, Sarah?
Yes, the external redecoration works are all booked in for when the weather improves in March. Nick and I took quite a rigorous assessment of the 4 quotes that came in, and it was left to us to agree on one of 2, which we've done. So yes, that work will be going ahead when the weather's better, March, April time.
But we've had in mind that perhaps it's beginning to get time to look at the village hall in terms of its future and does it need revamping or whatever, potentially a much more major piece of work. But my feeling is, I don't know what you feel, Nick, as chairman of facilities, we've got a lot on at the moment. We may need to put that to one side for a bit. What do you think?
What I think is, it's the sort of thing which creative and energetic people might come up with a vision for. And Andy and Claire, who are both creative and energetic, have volunteered to have thoughts, which at some stage, when their busy lives allow them to have had the thoughts, they'll come back with. But the work we're going to be doing to dig out the wet rot and redecorate the exterior, deal with the roof and so on, will not be in any way affected by any grand visions for the future.
No.
So I think it's a sort of, not in the fridge, but it's subject to available resource, people resource, to actually do the thinking.
Yeah, I think there are 2 strands, aren't there? There's general renovation, keeping the building fit for purpose, but there was also this other idea about returning it to its former glory. So there are 2 separate strands on the village hall, really. What's on here is very much about the practical work that needs doing, but any kind of restoration project hasn't yet been scoped.
The third possibility is, do we knock it down and build something else?
We are intending to pursue the other parts of the surveyor's report in due course, but Sarah's been previously referring to this year's work, so there will be work to come forward.
Okay, well, looking at it from the point of view of this group, at the moment it hasn't reached the point of being a defined project, and no funds allocated and no clear prioritization. But I would certainly be very comfortable if, say, Claire and Andy were happy to give some thought and then take that through facilities committee and start knocking around some ideas for the future. Stressing, though, then there's no commitment yet to anything, but we do need to start somewhere. Would that be all right with everybody?
Yeah.
I'm happy with that. I'm slightly worried about my capacity to be able to think about it with Claire, if I'm being really honest with you, particularly with some stuff that's going on at work at the moment. So if it's a longer term ambition, that's fine. If it's anytime soon, it might be a bit difficult for me to commit to it, if I'm being completely honest. I know I committed to it previously, but it's quite a lot of stuff going on.
Well, don't worry about it. I'll be the muscle and just bend your ear every now and then.
That's absolutely fine. From my point of view, it is not priority compared with, say, taking the village design work forward or whatever. But again, it's one of those things I don't want to lose sight of entirely. And so if at some point you, or indeed if anybody else comes forward with some ideas that facilities can start knocking about, fine. But we can't at the moment give it any priority. Is that okay? Is there anything else that we ought to be thinking about on this sort of list? The exception is that I later just want to touch upon community-based projects, but we'll come to those.
There is one more that Nick reminded me that's a bit of a commitment that's already in the pipeline, and that's the Millennium Mosaic restoration.
Oh, yes. How's that being managed? Who's managing that?
Miriam's taken it on, and she's actively looking into it for us.
Do we have an idea of costs yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Come back to us when you do, I think.
Will do, yeah.
That's fine. Okay, let's move on then. Item 5, the West List Play and Leisure Project. That project brief has now been worked up. And what we've got in front of us is the final project bid, which we intend to submit to the South Downs. Is that right?
That's right. It's if a previous meeting, I think, of facilities and possibly council, we agreed we just needed to reshape the previous bid to do two things particularly. One was to put it in a more strategic context to show how it fits with the rest of the facilities in the rest of the village, and secondly to considerably boost its sense of urgency, because it had been in their list as high priority but low urgency, and we want it to be high priority and high urgency. So I redrafted with substantial input from Roger and from Sarah, and that's what we have before us. There are just a few tiny textual things that Sarah and I are going to discuss in the next couple of days, and then it needs to go in if it's not to be lost.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about us going forward with this, although again, we recognise that there's a lot of work on detailed design that will come up at some point, and exactly what's provided. But this is really about getting the bid in to the South Downs, which relates to the item in item 6, which is their infrastructure business plan, and which we're being invited effectively to resubmit it. I don't think that that's an issue for us. I think we're quite clear on that. What I'm less clear is, do we put anything else in? Because our experience of these things is that you really do have to major on the things you want to try and achieve. And other things in some ways can be a bit of a distraction. So I'm just wondering whether there are other things that we actually ought to have.
Howard's got his hand up, Roger.
Yeah, Howard.
Just one comment. On page 4, it's got estimated project delivery duration 2, and I don't know what it is. Days, hours, months, years.
Okay, Nick will take that away. Right. Okay. Well, I'm less concerned with this as to whether there are other items that ought to be going on the South Downs infrastructure list. This clearly is our number one priority, and we need to make sure that it's shown as our number one priority. And
the deadline is this weekend as well.
Yeah.
Chair, just a thought. My impression from talking it through with Sarah is that it's quite a good thing to have a queue of things on the list. The key thing is whether in the one from the right-hand end column, it says long-term or short-term. And I think the essential thing is that the West List one turns into short-term in capital letters. But I wouldn't suggest that we leave off other things that we might want to have in the pipeline.
Right. Okay. I'm very comfortable with that view if others share that. But let me just be clear. What else do we put? Is it too early to, for example, we've got new street furniture services and facilities, which is a rather older one, but is perhaps now beginning to get subsumed into the village centre redesign. So should village centre redesign start to appear, or is that too big and too complicating? Any thoughts on that?
My feeling, Chair, is that I think we should mention village centre redesign, because actually undergrounding of utilities in Liss and new street furniture and facilities in Liss is village centre redesign, but in a not very articulate way of describing it. So I think it would be better for us to signal a medium-term commitment to village centre improvements.
I would support that. Would others do that? It would mean we would subsume the street furniture item and the undergrounding item, which have been knocking around for some time but haven't been actioned. We would subsume them into including a bid for the village centre redesign, but we need to indicate that it's second in the list behind West Liss Recreation Ground.
Yeah, I would support that.
I would support.
Yes, I will as well.
All right, let's do that then. Is there anything else that is important that we include in this list?
I would like to have a conversation about including Forest Road improvements in the list. And the reason for that is because I think whatever the solution is, it's not going to be just something that we can fund from our own budget. We have, as an organisation, committed to looking at Forest Road improvements. So I think we should be signalling that we'll be bidding for it in due course in this process.
So we would have to be honest that unlike the other projects, which actually have proper project briefs and we know what we're doing, for Forest Road, it's not a lot more than a twinkle in our eye.
I agree with that. But conversations with SDMP, often they will refer back to this and say, if it's been on the list for a couple of years and things come forward, they then consider it as a longer term commitment from the organisation rather than things just appearing out of nowhere. So I think it's important for us to read across this to our priority plan list and reference, have a read across so we can see, actually, we know we're delivering this and this is where it should go on there, because it's about signposting a little bit.
Would others be comfortable with that it was prioritised in the longer term in that way? Because it is a project for which at the moment we have absolutely no funding ourselves for. So
Roger, can I just, sorry, I was looking at your paper today from November 19, Roger, about the background to this, and highways improvements was one of the 10 original projects submitted to the SDMPA in 2017, which then became 11 when we added West Liss. So I don't know what's happened to that particular project. It's not on this list from Jessica, but it just seems to have fallen by the wayside. Before the meeting, I was trying to track down the original application, but I couldn't find it. I think I've only got it in hard copy in the office, but it just seems to have got lost and disappeared from the list because we did actually put it on the list at the outset. In
that case, are everybody comfortable if we reinstate it in some form?
Yeah, definitely.
I'll just say that a couple of years ago, I was invited as chairman of Highways to talk at a meeting of Liss Forest Residents Association, and it was a bit sticky and there were some very strong opinions that something should be done. So if something appears that seems to be downgrading it, we might have representation from Liss Forest Residents Association.
Well, better that it's there than it's not there at all would be my answer to that.
Nick's got his hand up, Roger.
Just for the record, I have been keeping this Forest Residents Association committee in the loop, and they are pleased that we are giving it some priority. They recognise that it's not a quick fix, and I think, as far as I'm aware, in COVID times, they are happy with what we're doing.
Thank you. Okay. Unless anybody's got anything else, that probably is sufficient to be the basis of our bidding to the infrastructure business plan for this coming year. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nick's got something. Nick?
So sorry, at the top of the second page, perhaps I missed.
Purchase of land. Well,
this sounds like a very attractive but somewhat sort of vague vision. I mean, purchasing some land to stop people doing horrible things on it would appeal to a lot of residents in a part of this forest, but it does seem a rather sort of general aspiration.
This has its origins a long time ago, as I understand it, when they looking at the village plan and so on. I know Sue Halstead was very keen on this, but as far as I'm aware, nobody has ever done any solid work on it.
No,
we have Mill Road now. We could
Sorry?
almost say that we could say that it's been advanced by way of the Mill Road Community Garden project, because that's what it amounts to.
That's very
Taking on a
true.
new.
Fair point.
So we could say actually we've made progress and achieved something on that, so that can just drop off.
Well, I'm slightly reluctant to put something that is so vague, I must say. I do think one needs things with a bit more shape than that.
I mean, just to give a bit of background, the reason it came on the list originally was because it's recognised that this, without the additional 77 houses that are going up in Anders Wood, it is deficient in its space that it has for public open space. We should have more than we have, and so I think the reason Sue wanted it there was to make sure that should an opportunity come along for us to purchase some land, that it was on the list. Andy's got his hand up. Andy?
I was just going to say that this feels to me like one that we need to do a bit more work on. So while I acknowledge that Forest Road requires a plan, actually we know it's an issue and we're putting it on as a place that requires a plan to be bid towards. I think if we are going to have something like this as a priority, we need to identify where we think this land is and how we might want to buy it before we have it as signposted on a list for SIL funding, because then at least we know that there's a pipeline project in the way on it. It feels to me like this should be our pipeline of stuff that we know is in track to be delivered or worked up.
In that case, can I suggest that we move it off the South Downs list, but move it to our list that we considered on item 4 of project delivery established and planned projects, and at least we note it on that list so we don't lose sight of it.
Yeah, I think that's valid. I think as well. Yeah, I think there's two things which have been raised which are worth bearing in mind. One is Mill Road, and the second, of course, is the fact that we are now gaining the Sang for, or we will soon be gaining the Sang for the development in Anders Ash. So, which of course will be more public space.
Right. Okay. In that case, then we won't include it on the South Downs list, but we will make sure it's listed as one of our possible projects for the future. Is that right, Sarah, just to add it to that list?
Yeah.
Fine, let's move on then. Item 8, this is about the fact that...
Chair.
Yeah, sorry.
Do we need a motion to agree that the new bid should go in for West Liss? In which case I would propose it.
Yes,
I don't think we need one, because we've already had a motion agreeing that it's the priority to be submitted on. I don't think we need a motion to agree the precise wording. There's definitely been a motion to agree it as a priority.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it like that. That's fine. I get tired voting on everything anyway. Let's move on. Item 8. This is the fact that SIL funding, most of it goes to the South Downs National Park, but we do get 20% that comes to us directly. Cuts and dribs and drabs, but we do have 6,362, which is sitting there. Two possibilities have been suggested here. One is that having done the Patang terrain, it needs a pathway, which is really a continuation of the path to the children's play area. It needs a path because the ground there can get extremely wet, such as it is now. So do we have a cost for that, Sarah?
You're on mute, Sarah.
You've got mute, Sarah.
Yes, I chased the second quote just before the meeting. So I now have 3 options that range in between £2,000 and just under £4,000.
Okay.
That it might be for the facilities committee to consider which one they want to go with, possibly. But the 6,000 sum could cover that and the recycling of the play equipment.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're all happy in principle that some of that money is spent towards providing a footpath to the Batang terrain.
That's probably where we do need the motion.
Yes, we probably do need a motion on that.
May I suggest, Chair, that if this very large subcommittee is favourably disposed, that we actually agree to spend the money rather than leave it for a couple of months for facilities, because I think it's something it would be good to plan to get on with.
I can see that. I'm slightly concerned that we do need to go through a formal process to accept the tender. So I suppose what we're agreeing is to that process. Is it, Sarah?
Project Review Group could agree to spend up to the highest figure and then leave Facilities Committee to decide which of the three options it wants to go with.
Yeah, somebody needs to look at those options because they may not be exactly the same, of course.
No, and it's only just come in. We've not looked in any detail.
I'd be comfortable if it's for this group, we simply said that we pass a motion that we agreed to spending up to how much?
The highest figure is 3890.
Well, I can't cope with detail. Up to 4,000.
Yeah.
For the provision of the pathway, with the detail and the arrangements to be made by the Facilities Committee.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have the authority to spend money?
Well, I think Claire and I can do it anyway at that level.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think that, but it would be helpful to feel that the members were behind it.
Yeah. No, I'm certainly supporting it. I just.
Yeah. I take the point. I take the point.
Chair, what I was hoping that we would agree, given that it is a couple of months before facilities, would be, as with the village hall, to remit to Sarah and myself to consider the bids. But we could come to you and Claire for sign off of the actual spend, rather than build in a delay.
I can see that. One doesn't want a delay. What do others feel about that? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
given this level of spending, I think, yeah.
Yeah, given the, okay. Let's have a motion then that we leave it to Nick Wilson and Claire Williams to consider the tenders. I don't know, Nick and who else?
Sarah.
And Sarah to look at the tenders, and with the agreement of the chairman and the chairman of Finance Committee to approve the appropriate tender and basically get on with it. All those in favour? Can I have a seconder to that? I'll propose it. Somebody second it.
She just got a hand up. I'm not sure if she's seconding or if she's got a hand up. See there? Are you seconding?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't. I was.
Never mind.
I can. But...
Okay. All those in favour? Right.
Yeah, that's everyone, I think.
Yeah, that would take the bulk of the 6,300. What's the resiting of play equipment? Sarah, can I just ask you to explain that?
Of course. List Parish Council has been offered some free play equipment that has to be removed from Selborne. But we would have to pay the sum of £1,595 to the company to undertake a survey and to site the equipment. So it's just a fee for transporting the equipment to us. The idea was that it could be placed in the Mill Road Community Garden. Failing that, it could be used at West Liss as a temporary solution. I think the idea currently on the table is that it's placed in the new Mill Road Community Garden to enhance the plans there.
What's involved in this play equipment? What is it?
There are three items. There's a small climbing frame, a couple of balance beams, and I think there's something else that I can't remember. Do you remember, Nick? I'm sure, yeah, I've got it here. Right, the stepping stones, so a number of short logs, 2 balance beams and a small climbing frame. I can show you, I don't know if it'll be clear, but
Okay, and this has been used for a short period at Selborne.
A very short period. It's practically new, apparently.
Why did they reject it?
Complaints from neighbours. They're just moving equipment. That's all they've got on site. So effectively, I think they're closing the site as a play area.
So it wasn't a problem with the equipment as such. It was just that they had a play area in that location.
That's what I understand. Yes, the equipment is practically new and is well worth the money. We've been told that we'd have to spend to relocate it.
While I can see that we're getting fairly new equipment on the cheap, I'm still not totally clear that it's something that we actually want. You know, one needs to be careful about cheap offers just because they're cheap. Nick?
Oh, certainly we want something like it in Mill Road.
Yeah.
What I was going to say, I very seldom disagree with Sarah, but on reflection, I'm thinking if we want the children's play area in Mill Road to be more extensive than this offer, we should actually be paying for the installation as part of installing the whole thing, rather than having a separate installation item for these three objects. So my instinct would be to hold back that money and not agree to allocate it out of this £6,362. I'd rather we kept that in.
What would happen to the equipment? Would they
they're storing it for us for free.
Obviously, only if we indicate that we do want to take it. Otherwise, they'll offer it to another parish council. We only got first stabs because the person actually lives in Liss himself. So, Nick, are you suggesting that we don't use it at all for Mill Road?
Not at all. No, what I'm saying is that we need, as part of the Mill Road project, to decide how extensive the children's play area is going to be, of which I think this will only be part, and we ought to install everything at once rather than install this lot separately.
Mill Road doesn't have a play area as such. It had a couple of more natural play features. I wouldn't say it's a full play area like the others.
Does it imply that we take the equipment from Selborne, we store it somewhere, we pay for having taken it in some way perhaps, but we don't do the installation until we've got a clearer view of what we're doing in terms of the totality?
I don't think we can take the equipment without committing to paying that fee to the company that's removing the equipment. I think that's part of the offer.
I mean, it's really for facilities to take a view to what they think is value for money here. And we're just considering in terms of whether it's worth supporting the bid to use SIL money for it. So have you looked at the equipment, Nick, or anybody?
I've only looked at it in photographic terms. I think that certainly Lizzie, as one of the architects of the Mill Road plan, was very keen. I think David is quite keen, but I'd like really to talk to both of them. And if we decide that it isn't appropriate for Mill Road, maybe we'll have to look this particular gift horse in the mouth. I just don't think we should rush to commit this money today for this purpose.
We've had a discussion about how we see the Mill Road play area being, what it's going to look like, what it should contain.
That's precisely what I wanted to talk to David and Lizzie about. It's very much, they have been in the lead on this, and David is continuing to lead on it. I don't feel qualified to make a judgment as of tonight about whether this is an essential part of the Mill Road project now we've been offered it.
Sarah, do you think Selborne could be persuaded to at least hold on to it for another couple of weeks or so, something like that, to give time to really look at it?
I'm sure that the play it's the play equipment company that we'd have to convince, but when we could certainly ask. it may also worth be considering whether it's placed in West List, because even if we're successful in the West List bid, we won't know that until November of this year. So any improvements at the West List aren't going to happen until 2022. And we often receive complaints about the poor state because if everything's been pulled out, there's nothing left. So that's probably maybe a bit too late to put that
I
down
think
now, but
personally, I think that's an interesting idea, because if we, I mean, it does seem a shame to reject play equipment which has been offered to us for a bargain price, really. I do wonder whether it makes sense at the moment to agree to fund it, but locate it at West List, so it just goes there, on the basis that we presumably it would not cost a fortune to then move it from West List to Mill Road at a later date, should we wish to do so.
Can I offer a third thought, having had second thoughts?
Keep thinking, Nick.
I think the deal that they're offering is that they will give it to us for free, but providing they can install it.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful now, on reflection, to agree to allocate the sum they're asking so that we can secure it, but not at this stage commit to which site it will actually go.
That makes sense.
On that basis, I think they'll be willing to continue to store it in their yard, and we can then deploy it when we're clear of which will be the best site for it.
So, from the point of view of this group, then we would support a sum of, what is it, 1,500 and something.
1595.
1595 being taken from the available SIL funding for the purpose of acquiring this equipment, but we would leave it in the hands of Nick and the facilities committee or whoever to take a view at exactly how it's best used within the village.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd be happy with that.
That, between them, those two bids take up virtually the whole of the 6,362. So I think we stop there. Is that right, Sarah?
Yeah, pretty much. There'll be a few £100 left, but once we know the cost of the path, and we can look at what's left, and what we might spend it on.
Exactly, we don't have to rush it into spending.
No,
it.
not at all. No.
So, Sarah,
we should probably now.
Do you think that by the next meeting of the committee, we could have a proposal from Miriam about the Mosaic restoration? Because I know there are some stakeholders in the village who are very keen that we should do that.
It's all dependent on a meeting with a key person who hadn't been well and hadn't been able to meet until now, hopefully. So I think if we can't have a report on how to undertake the repairs, we can at least have an update.
Can we leave you to have a word with Miriam about timing?
Yeah, of course. I'll make sure we have something to bring to facilities, even if it is just an update, but hopefully something more concrete. Can we just have a proposer and seconder for the spending this 1595 on the play equipment?
Nick, will you propose that?
I will.
Nick.
Seconder.
I saw Claire.
Thank you. All those in favour? All those against? Thank you. Let's move on to item 9, which looks like a big item, but it's not meant to be. One of the things that we've done so far is discussed really infrastructure projects. This is the provision of equipment and other facilities for use by people, all of which is a key component of what we do. A number of members have expressed the idea that perhaps we ought to be working more closely, particularly with other groups within the village, on more community-based projects, which are not necessarily reliant on facilities as such, although that might come into it. And I think, Nick, you had a couple of ideas of things that we might look at, perhaps not in isolation, but about whether we could actually initiate a little bit of work of talking to others about them.
I have two ideas which have come from things that people have been saying to us, which I would like the committee to empower me to do some scoping on, without any commitment at this stage to spend any money. I'm not even sure that either would need any money spent at this stage. But the two issues are the issue of loneliness, and I think that people who've been volunteering in the community during the COVID crisis will have intelligence to share on the subject of loneliness. And I think it would be a pity to miss the opportunity to see whether there's something that we could encourage and facilitate, not to actually do ourselves, which would be a lasting legacy of the COVID volunteering spirit. And to that end, I'd quite like to talk outside this meeting to Jenny, but I'd also like to talk to people like Annie Coley, Bill Briggs as our village agent, and others, and see whether we can come up with any ideas that might then be turned into a proposition. The second is what I think most people would describe as antisocial behaviour. Some might regard as an intergenerational difference of view. And I'd like to talk to Leanne as the crossover link, to Jeanette, given her professional experience, crossover representatives, police representatives, Newman Collard, just again to scope whether there's anything by bringing together some different players we could make some progress on that. I can't promise the timescale, but I'd simply like to have, if the committee would agree, some authority to progress those discussions.
Thank you very much for that, Nick. Any comment? No, in that case, I'd be very comfortable with.
Andy had his hand up, wasn't
it? Andy's.
It's all right. I was just going to say I think it's a good thing to scope, and I would just include the schools in the conversation about the intergenerational fairness issue, whatever we're calling it. And I know from an informal conversation with the head that they'd be interested in being part of the initial conversation.
Apologies, that was my age getting in the way. Andy has discussed that with me and very kindly has introduced that thought to Julie. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I think we can support the idea of doing a bit of scoping work there. Some other parish councils elsewhere do a lot more work than we do in this sort of area, but there are issues that other people do some of this work, and what capacity do we have to do it, and so on. What value can we add? So I'm very comfortable with just a bit of scoping work at this stage, if others are. Okay.
Could I make one more pitch to be included in the thinking? I think it's worth acknowledging that we do spend quite a lot of public money on grant giving already. And I guess it's just kind of how we roll that into this sort of consideration, because are we getting enough bang for our buck? I don't think it needs a lot of work, but there's something about joining it up to our existing grant process as well as you do your thinking on it, Nick.
Yeah, I'll leave that thought with Nick. That seems to be absolutely fine.
On a similar vein, actually, Nick, another group you might want to, it strikes me you might want to reach out to on that is this Heart Trust, because I'm just conscious of the fact that their only income is from the shop, and the shop has been shut for 10 months now. And I guess we have a vested interest since they've helped us with defibrillators in the past, but I think it would be worth just reaching out to them and see what the situation is.
No, I'd be quite happy for someone else to volunteer to do that, as I don't think it's particularly about loneliness or antisocial behaviour. I'm offering those too.
Yeah,
okay.
Right. Yes. Well, I was not saying it's exclusively those subjects, but we need to dip our toe in somewhere. Okay, let me move on to item 10. And we're very aware, I think, that community engagement is something.
Nope.
Roger.
Ironic to disappear at the moment of engagement.
Yeah. hopefully he will try and come back in.
If he's anything like my mom, he'll carry on talking for half an hour and then realise no one's listening.
Oh.
Does anyone have a mobile for him that you can give him a ring?
Yeah, Sarah was just going to, I think.
Okay.
Keith, should I just fill the gap by saying that Roger and I had a bit of a chat about this item, and not least because it's been a very full agenda. The thought was that we might want to remit this to a smaller group, which would include Andy and myself. Andy, because obviously the village centre will be a major focus for engagement. Myself, because currently I have a lead on local engagement, and perhaps one or two others that we might invite. It is rather been quite a long meeting.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
It makes sense to me if colleagues are happy with that. I would like to ask Jenny to volunteer to join the group.
I was going to ask if I could. Yes, please.
Selfish person, because I think that the skills and experience that you bring from the List and surrounding villages Facebook group would be really useful.
Anything to do with engagement, I'm more than happy to help out on.
Brilliant.
Can I just report back from Roger? I think you've already covered some of the ground, but he said all he was going to say is that we should look at what we want to consult on and how we do it. And he was going to propose a subgroup consisting of Nick, Andy and Jenny to take forward some discussions. I believe you may have already come to that in a different
I think we've come to the same conclusion. So,
I couldn't hear because I was talking to Roger, obviously.
That's okay. So is everyone happy with that? And
I think the problem with doing consulting via social media is you get a subset of the village, which is not necessarily a cross-section of the village. And I don't think you can do this for everything, but once before, when we had the skate park as a very hot subject, I actually ran an opinion poll where I randomly selected people. I got professional advice on how to do it. And that was quite useful because we got a result that we could quote. Whereas the trouble is, if it's just done from Facebook, you're only getting the people who use Facebook.
Can I just thank Howard for that? That's certainly something that is in our minds as part of the process, together with a number of focus groups or forums once we're out of COVID, to enable people to come and focus on particular issues that we might want them to look at. But certainly face-to-face opinion polls and ideally subject to our ability to distribute something that isn't electronic for people who don't use computers will be in our minds.
Hello again, I'm back.
We've just agreed, or almost agreed, to what you said to Sarah.
Yes, oh good. My apologies. This comes from running my laptop on its battery, and it's suddenly running out, and then me realizing that the cable is the other end of the room. But never mind, here we are. Yes, it was just to get a chat going, basically. to try and define what we might do. I'm particularly interested how we integrate a bit more with social media, which we've already made a big start on, but there's a way to go. But it is about trying to really understand what we want to get out of it, I think is important. So on that basis, if a small group is prepared to meet.
We are.
Good.
So could I just check, this is community engagement with regard to the projects that we've discussed in the project review group? Or community engagement generally?
I would leave it for the group to come back on that. I mean, to me, there are two things. You can have engagement, which is very specific on almost project by project. But equally, I think we feel the need, particularly as we look at some of the more community-based activities, we need to look at our ongoing engagement with the community. So I think it's two things here. I don't know whether you'd agree with that, either Andy or Nick, perhaps.
Based on previous discussion, my thought was that it would be primarily about investing in the community, about our future investments, what our priorities should be, and that would encompass village centre and other things. But if we can help by coming up with new ways or better ways or reviving old ways of communicating about other things, then that would be helpful, I'm sure. But for example, the village centre, we would be making an absolutely major investment. We need to think what to engage community on and when to do it.
I would agree with that, and just add, I also think it's about us thinking about the next pipeline of projects. One of the challenges I always get from colleagues, and I always think is quite valid, is how do we know this is important? I know we're notionally representatives of the village, but there's a bit about if we do want to develop a pipeline of social and infrastructure projects, how do we get a clear steer from our community that those are the right things to focus on?
Okay, well, I don't want to preempt. Sorry, Leanne.
We do have a community engagement policy, which is about to be reviewed at the next policy review committee.
Sorry, I missed the very beginning of what you were saying then, Leanne. I'm aware that you're looking at this.
Yeah.
But I think this is more about the practical carrying out of things rather than the actual overall objective.
Okay.
Could I suggest to Leanne that maybe enabling this mini group to have some thoughts, and I'm not sure quite what timescale we can do it in, given other commitments, particularly what Andy said earlier about his commitments, that the review committee doesn't finalise any revision until we've had a chance to come up with some ideas.
Okay, it's just we've got it on the agenda for our next meeting, which is on the 3rd of February, and the papers have just gone out.
Well, I think my request stands. It would seem a pity to, in a sense, sign that off and then discover that we missed some new ideas, new thoughts about how we could be doing things.
I don't think that's difficult. There does need to be a cross conversation here, but I don't think there's inherently any great conflict. We do need a clear policy, and it needs updating, but that's slightly different from the actual practicalities of how we may actually go about things, I think. So if we can have that, make sure that conversation does take place, given Leanne's timetable there, we just need to bear that in mind. Okay, I'm going to call it a whole. It's been quite a long meeting. We've covered a lot of things, I think. We've confirmed a number of projects. I think we're aware of which ones are priorities. One or two we've actually made clear are lower priorities. And we've initiated various individuals and groups of people to start thinking about the future. I stress that these are thinking about the future. We can't commit ourselves to things as yet, but we need to be thinking about the future in that way. So thank you very much, everybody. I'm not going to set a date for the next meeting now. I think it's a bit as business occurs. If that's all right with people. Thank you very much.